Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03 a.m. The sound is faint at first, somewhere at the beginning of the lane near the Carson place. We're towards the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen sometimes to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we catch hell if they found us out here. They were never too hard on us though, since we always stuck to the one big rule. Don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived there since I was 6, and I love it. The houses are well kept but small. Good sized yards, plenty of places to explore. There's a lot of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together and would always play four squares in the cul-de-sac or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only the two strange things here. The night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom, but Mom and Dad don't like talking about it. So I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent and he moved to the US as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. At least. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker. Eyes move faster, and tells us not to think about it too much. And to always remember that one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes by. Not that we could look even if we wanted to see. You see, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that put down from the top of the latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock, about the size of what you find in the diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before you all go to bed, and keeps the keys in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there, at least I haven't caught her much. But once or twice a month, I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Remember how I said there are two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistling, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about this part much, either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually, it's small things. Winning a radio contest, or getting an unexpected promotion at work. Or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard, you know? The authentic kind. The weather is pretty good, and there's no crime. Everyone's gardens bloomed extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings, I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small. I remember her, small even compared to the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctor couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing, but we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew, even I knew, Nola was getting better. Was just another one of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed even after we found that for every small miracle that happened here every day, now and then, some bad things happen. But they only happen if you look for the whistler. See, our neighborhood was a welcoming committee. They showed us with the macaroni casserole, and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people show up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee asks small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. Then the comedy asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming comedy told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was, really exceptionally. Hard to explain kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happens every morning at 3:03, and ends at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, would never harm or hurt us as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. This part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the comedy brought us contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths, and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad. But the life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again. No presence. My mom, I could tell, wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank to play on new neighbors. At one point, my mom got really angry, accused the comedy of trying to scare us out of our own new home. Asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere, and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kind of stories from his mom, and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good, and some were bad, but most were just different. After the comedy left, my dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. The first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held up his finger in a shh motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat and waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. It came and it went just like our neighborhood said. The whistling returns each night. I've never looked, and we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathes on her own, and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad joined the welcoming comedy. We didn't get new neighbors often, but would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the comedy bring them the macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the comedy seriously, or if we get new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in directly next to us. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, passed away at age 105. She lived a good long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they'd fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming comedy, took my dad's advice about locking shutters, since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in the manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night, when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son Holden to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before the night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off at my dinner, I could tell it was going to be a very, very bad time. "Do you know who's always out there whistling every night?" Holden asked the moment adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. "We don't talk about that," I said. "I think it's the weirdo that lives in the big yellow house in the corner," Holden said. "Mr. Tolles?" my sister asked. "No way, he's really nice." Holden shrugged. "Must be a psycho killer then." Nola tensed. "We don't talk about it," I repeated. "Let's go in my room and play Nintendo." We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting angsty. After my parents had wished us good night, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over where Nola and I were sitting on bed. "Have you ever tried looking?" he asked. "It's nearly time." Like most sleepovers, we conveniently ignored any suggestion for bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. "We don't see? I can't. I can't even try to look because my dad looks the blinds every night and hides the key," he continued, ignoring me. "So does our dad," said Nola. "No," replied Holden. "No, he doesn't." "You saw him do it," I said, a little sharper than I meant to sound. Holden grinned. "Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal keychain." "So?" I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next. Because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all these years. Because he knew we took it seriously. "So, after your dad locked up, before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom, and on my way I may have peeked into the room. And I may have seen your dad's keychain on his nightstand, and maybe went and borrowed the key to blinds." Nola and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. "You're lying," I said. Holden shrugged. "You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand." "Stay here," I told the both of them. "Don't move a muscle." I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the whistler right outside. I opened the door barely an inch and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I went into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling come closer. Unsure whether I should turn on the light or call out for my dad, soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. "Nola!" I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door next to the window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling for the lock and one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our outhouse now. I think I made a sound. Called out. I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face. But I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a movement. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us, so she was facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola shaking in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that we could face towards the hallway, and I was facing the window. My eyes were closed. I felt her nodding to my shoulder. I reached out with one arm holding Nola and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nola. "Holden?" I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt for the window, eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it could have been for the time of year. I moved my hands up the window, searching for the string to the blind. The glass began to get warmer the farther I reached, and there was a gentle hum beating back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blinds shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking out of the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turned towards me and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, in the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale, had bit his lips so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his cheek. And he wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night, in the moment. An old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's fear. "Just Holden," he mouthed at me. I nodded yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved I nearly expected him to cheer. But then he turned to Holden and my dad's face changed. I wondered if he felt bad for feeling good that Holden was the one that looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I always thought she was skeptic and just humored my dad about the window and the whistler, but that night we were all believers. I noticed that both my parents had baseball bats they must have taken from the bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door." Sorry. My dad walked over to me. My dad was still holding his bat. Nothing was going on. This time, soft tap, 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 coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair, but never lied to him. Never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually my mom tried to take us kids into my room while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into the bedroom, the knock came back, so loud it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's about the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. "Okay," he told us, "it's done." Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to the Holden's family. It was a Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched a movie. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me, my dad and the Cherry pulled over. There was no knocking that night, or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week, but by Thursday, there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nola and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me the most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three of them had the same pallor, grim mouths, and lightless eyes. Even from the outside, even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original Welcome Comedy said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at their Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune. A million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe or share the burden if they did. I watch Nola sometimes, happy and young and alive, and I wonder if I'd been slower, if she looked out that window that night, would I have looked to comfort her, to share that burden? I'm glad I don't have to find out. It's been 2 months since the night Holden stayed here. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear a Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. But we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore. And my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. Hello guys, Twisted here, and I just want to say thank you guys for listening to this story. And as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you can stay tuned for any new uploads. As always, thank you for watching, and I see you next time. Sorry, and I'll see you guys next time. Twisted out. Peace.